A magnificent white mansion stood in La Jolla, an upscale neighborhood of San Diego, California. In a room on the second floor, April Williams let out a quiet sigh. Through the window, she could see the sun setting over the Pacific Ocean. Usually, this beautiful scenery would soothe her soul, but today it felt somehow empty. Rising at 5 a.m. to head to the hospital, working 12-hour shifts, and then coming home to tackle household chores, that was her daily routine. Yet April never complained. She found fulfillment in her work as a nurse, and more than anything, she wanted to be accepted as a member of this family. Working late again? April turned to find her mother-in-law, Patricia, giving her a cold stare. Patricia stood elegantly with her arms crossed, wearing a gray twin set and pearl necklace. Her perfect appearance made her look like the quintessential wealthy, suburban housewife. "I'm sorry. We had a critical patient admitted today." "Well, I suppose that's to be expected. You're just a nurse, after all." Patricia's words always carried a tone of contempt. As a former high school teacher, she clearly viewed nursing as beneath her station. The designer handbag on the table spoke volumes about her upper-class consciousness. April was 32, a veteran nurse of 7 years at San Diego General Hospital. Her gentle nature and dedication to patients had earned her the trust of her colleagues, and she was particularly beloved by George Brown, a terminal cancer patient, who treated her like his own daughter. Today, Mr. Brown's condition had suddenly deteriorated, causing her to be 3 hours late. "Mother, we've been through this many times." At the sound of that voice behind her, April's expression softened with relief. It was her husband, Michael. An executive at an IT company, he was thoughtful and devoted to his wife. While taking a work call, he gently wrapped one arm around her shoulders. "Michael, you could have married someone more suitable." Jennifer, for instance, she was a Stanford graduate from a wealthy family. "Mom, please, not this again." "You know Mom's right." The one who cut into the conversation was Michael's sister, Ashley. A lawyer at a prestigious firm, she took pride in her education and profession, and always looked down on April. Today too, she was perfectly dressed in a suit, apparently just returning from entertaining clients at an upscale restaurant. 3 years ago, Michael met April at the University Hospital where she was volunteering during his mother's post-surgery rehabilitation. He was moved by her gentle approach with patients, especially her attentiveness to elderly patients, and after 6 months of dating, he decided to marry her. However, Patricia and Ashley were strongly opposed from the start. "The idea of a mere nurse becoming part of our family is ridiculous. You should find someone more suitable. Think about our social standing." They married despite such opposition. 2.5 years had passed since then. April worked long hours as a nurse from early morning until late at night, while perfectly managing household chores on her days off, always mindful of her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, everything was done impeccably, yet the two women's criticism remained harsh. She was particularly concerned about George Brown, the terminal cancer patient. A wealthy bachelor, he doted on April like she was his own daughter. During daily treatments, April was especially gentle with him, providing massages to ease his pain and offering emotional support, never failing to show the utmost consideration. "So, you'll be late again tonight?" Ashley asked in a malicious tone. Swirling an expensive wine glass, her gaze was sharp and cold. "Yes, Mr. Brown's condition isn't good. Oh. Serving a wealthy elderly man? How clever. Hoping for an inheritance, are we? Michael frowned at those words, but April maintained her usual gentle smile. In her heart, she still hadn't given up hope of building a good relationship with her family. Even if every day felt like a trial, she believed that someday they would come to understand each other. That night was colder than usual. When April returned from the hospital, an unusual tension hung in the living room. On the table sat a half-empty bottle of expensive wine. Patricia and Ashley's expressions, as they sipped their wine, held a sort of cruel pleasure. "Welcome home, April," Patricia's voice rang unusually shrill. Standing before the large fireplace in the living room, her mother-in-law swirled her wine glass and began speaking in a tone that sounded like delivering a verdict. "My daughter is coming home. You useless daughter-in-law need to leave immediately." Those words struck April's heart like a whip. However, maintaining the composure she'd developed as a nurse, she replied quietly. "But this is our home. Someone from the lower class like you has no right to live in this house." Ashley cut in, approaching with her expensive heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "I graduated from a top university and I'm a lawyer. It's only natural that I return to my family home." "That's right. Ashley is more suitable," Patricia agreed. "Besides, you're both young, you can live anywhere, right? Why don't you go to a hotel?" "Right, Mom?" Ashley's voice carried obvious mockery. Just then, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Michael had returned from work. "I'm home. What's going on here?" Noticing the strange atmosphere, Michael immediately rushed to April's side. "Michael, let me explain." Patricia turned to face her son. "Ashley has decided to get divorced. From now on, she'll be living here with me." "What?" Michael's voice trembled. "In other words, you two need to leave," Ashley said coldly. "This is ridiculous." Michael protested vehemently. "There are plenty of rooms in this house. Why do we have to leave?" "I own this house, Michael," Patricia declared triumphantly. "Until now, I've merely allowed you to live here. But that's no longer necessary." April gently placed her hand on her husband's shoulder. She could feel his body trembling with anger. "It's all right, Michael," April said in a surprisingly calm voice. "I have a plan." Patricia and Ashley shot her mocking looks at those words. However, there was unmistakable confidence in April's eyes. That night, in their second-floor bedroom, April quietly began packing. She left behind the expensive furniture and appliances, packing only the personal items they truly needed. "Are you sure about this?" Michael still couldn't contain his anger. "Trust me," April gave him a serene smile. "Tomorrow morning, everything will change." The next morning, before sunrise, they began moving their belongings. Patricia and Ashley watched coldly from the second-floor windows. "Goodbye." April stood at the entrance and bowed deeply. "Thank you for everything." Patricia's eyes widened involuntarily at the sight. April's dignified manner seemed completely at odds with someone being evicted. She carried herself with what almost seemed like the composure of a victor. Michael's luxury SUV quietly drove away from the upscale La Jolla neighborhood. In the passenger seat, April checked the navigation on her smartphone, directing them to their next destination. After about 15 minutes, the car arrived at a residential area on a hill overlooking the ocean. There stood a mansion so magnificent that it would make anyone stop and stare. "This is our new home," April's voice was filled with quiet joy. Michael was speechless as he gazed up at the magnificent mansion before them. White walls, an elegant curved staircase, meticulously maintained gardens, everything was perfect. "April, this is..." "I'll explain. But first, let's go inside." April entered the security code at the gate. The heavy iron gate opened silently. As Michael watched his wife's back, he pondered. His always gentle and modest wife had been keeping such a big secret. And on the morning they were supposed to be evicted, they were instead heading to a new home like returning victors. No one could have predicted this turn of events. Standing at the mansion's entrance, April took a deep breath. In her heart, excitement about their new life mingled with complex feelings about the mother-in-law and sister-in-law they'd left behind. A refreshing ocean breeze from the Pacific gently caressed the mansion's vast gardens. April sat in a white wicker chair on the terrace, gazing at the ocean before her. 2 weeks had passed since moving into their new home, and the morning light seemed to shine even brighter than before. "Breakfast is ready." She stood up and headed toward the open-plan living and dining area. On the high-end marble kitchen counter, her homemade breakfast was laid out. French toast, fresh fruit, and the aroma of freshly ground coffee added a warm, homey atmosphere to the $3 million mansion. "Let's eat." Michael smiled at his wife's cooking. As an IT executive, he had noticeably relaxed over these 2 weeks. The mansion's interior exuded refined luxury. The large windows in the living room offered a panoramic ocean view, with elegant Italian luxury sofas perfectly arranged. The wine cellar was stocked with carefully selected wines, and Michael's beloved car was already parked in one of the 4-car garage spaces. "I still can't believe it," Michael said, sipping his coffee. "That you had such an amazing house prepared." April smiled gently. The spacious layout featured an independent kitchen, living room, and 2 bedrooms. It was meant to be a place where the whole family could live happily together. "Look," April pointed out the window. People from neighboring luxury homes were enjoying their morning walks. "Everyone has accepted us naturally." Indeed, life in this upscale neighborhood had been smoother than expected. The Johnsons next door had already invited them to a barbecue party in their garden, and they'd become friendly with the Andersons across the street through charity events. "Will you continue working as a nurse?" Michael asked, sounding slightly concerned. "Of course," April answered without hesitation. "Being a nurse isn't just a job for me." And just then, the entrance intercom rang. The security camera showed 2 familiar figures, Patricia and Ashley. Their appearance had changed remarkably in just 2 weeks. Their expensive designer clothes were gone, replaced by slightly worn casual wear. Ashley's perfect makeup was minimal now, and Patricia's hair wasn't as well styled as before. "I'll let them in," April quietly stood up. As the mansion's heavy door opened, her once proud mother-in-law and sister-in-law seemed to have shrunk, looking like different people entirely. "Please come back. Please." Patricia's voice had lost its former dignity. "We were wrong." Ashley pleaded through tears. April's heart ached at their condition. What had happened to them during these 2 weeks? Please, come in. April gently invited them inside. Led into the mansion's living room, the two women's eyes widened at its luxury. They stood speechless, particularly struck by the Pacific Ocean view from the terrace. Please sit down. I'll make some tea. While preparing tea in the kitchen, April reflected on their transformed appearances. Patricia's designer handbag was gone, and Ashley's rings were missing. We sold the house, Patricia began in a trembling voice. But it sold for much less than expected, only $350,000. And yet we have $500,000 in debt. April quietly served the tea. The fine English bone china cups made a subtle sound. April began speaking slowly. This house has a spacious first floor that can function as an independent living space. Originally, I intended for us all to live here together. Patricia and Ashley caught their breath at these words. But you threw us out of that house. April's voice carried no accusation, just a quiet statement of fact. Michael's expression showed surprise at his wife's words. So this mansion had such a plan. And now, those who had evicted them were here seeking help. What irony. The ocean breeze stirred the terrace curtains. That gentle movement brought a slight shift to the frozen atmosphere. A heavy atmosphere hung in the mansion's living room. Through the large windows, the setting sun over the Pacific cast an orange glow that softly illuminated the interior. April quietly sat down before Patricia and Ashley. Would you tell me everything? April's voice was soft yet firm. Patricia, having lost her former dignity, held her teacup with trembling hands. Without her luxury brands, wearing off-the-rack clothes from a department store, she looked almost costumed. I'll tell you everything, Ashley sighed deeply. Her eyes were red and swollen from exhaustion and tears. My divorce, it was because of my affair. Michael drew in a sharp breath at this confession. It was with a client's husband. A senior executive at a major corporation. I was attracted to him. Ashley's voice trembled. But everything came out. His wife filed a lawsuit. The law firm wouldn't protect me. The fireplace in the living room crackled softly. Its flames cast flickering shadows on Ashley's face. I also have something to confess, Patricia began in a thin voice. I got involved in stock trading and accumulated $500,000 in debt. Designer brands, luxurious meals, flashy lifestyle. I was too concerned with keeping up appearances. A tear rolled down Patricia's cheek. We threw you out because I thought we could sell the house to pay off the debt. But the house only sold for $350,000, Ashley continued. The real estate agent said it would sell for more. April quietly stood up and walked to the large window. The sun was about to set over the ocean. With this beautiful scene as her backdrop, she began speaking calmly. Actually, I have something to tell you too. Her voice momentarily froze the air in the room. This house was bequeathed to me by George Brown. Michael exclaimed in surprise. The wealthy businessman? April nodded with a gentle smile. Actually, Mr. Brown was your father's best friend, Michael. Patricia's eyes widened at these words. During the 6 months I was his nurse, Mr. Brown told me many stories. April lowered her eyes, as if remembering. Father's best friend? Michael's voice trembled. Yes. They were best friends since college and started a business together. But after your father passed away young, Mr. Brown remained single and decided to leave the majority of his fortune to his best friend's son's wife, meaning me. A deep silence fell over the room. But why did you keep quiet? Michael asked, looking confused. Mr. Brown's will specified that it should be kept secret until the inheritance was finalized. April smiled apologetically. Also, I didn't want to show off. I wanted to build genuine family bonds. Patricia suddenly broke down crying. How foolish were we? Her shoulders shook violently. Obsessing over family background, social status, such pointless pride. Ashley also began crying openly. I bragged about my elite university and being a lawyer, but in the end, I had an affair, got divorced, and lost my job. I'm the one who's truly lower class. April slowly approached the two women and gently placed her hands on their shoulders. This is our home. Her voice was warm yet firm. We'll respect each other's privacy and minimize interference. We'll help with the debt repayment. But promise me you'll never look down on us again. As the sunset light painted the room red, Patricia and Ashley offered sincere words of apology. At that moment, small tears glistened in April's eyes too. They weren't tears of hatred or triumph, but pure relief. The first floor is ready anytime. April stood up and took their hands. Shall we make dinner together as a new beginning for our family? Michael watched his wife's back, filled with deep emotion. Her forgiveness, strength, and depth of love, these were the priceless treasures that Mr. Brown, his father's best friend, had recognized in her. The sunset reflected in the mansion's windows gradually faded. There, a new form of family was quietly but surely being born. The large family life that April had dreamed of was finally becoming reality, after unexpected trials and detours. That night, the sound of conversation and laughter from the kitchen marked a small but definite first step toward this house becoming a true home.